Don't say you're down. You gotta stand up and fight. Got to stand up. Don't say you're down. You gotta stand up and fight. Got to stand up.
The iPhone 16e is a good phone, but you shouldn't buy it. I know that sounds strange, but at the end of this video, I promise you're going to understand exactly what I mean. Apple's newest and most affordable iPhone, the iPhone 16e, now replaces the previous iPhone SE, but calling it cheap and affordable doesn't really sound right. You see, the iPhone 16e starts at $599 USD, while the previous cheapest iPhone, which was the iPhone SE, started at $429 USD. So what exactly does the new iPhone 16e bring to the table to justify such a hefty price bump? Well, let's start off with the design. The design is a familiar look with a few new changes. At first glance, the iPhone 16e looks almost identical to the iPhone 14. This isn't a bad thing, as the 14 looked phenomenal. It has the same aluminum frame, the flat edges, and now a USB-C port. Yes, that's right. The iPhone 16e now has a USB-C port, bringing it all together in the Apple ecosystem. This means faster data transfer, less cables, and less pressure from the EU. Honestly, I love the design of the 16e. It's clean, it's simple, and modern. But one major change is the removal of the home button, meaning Face ID is finally here on Apple's cheapest phone. The camera layout has also gone through a change with a single 48 megapixel sensor on the back. We'll get back to the camera later because that's where I have some few gripes to pick with Apple. Furthermore, the 16e comes in two different color options. We have the matte white and the matte black. While the options are limited, both look fantastic. I personally went with the white version, and usually I tend to choose a black phone for the aesthetic, but the white matte version absolutely looks so fantastic in real life. I don't know how well it comes off on the camera, but in real life, this thing looks amazing. It looks so good that it's actually a phone that I could tend to use without a case just to show off its amazing design. And another key highlight on the design part is the matte finish on the back of the phone. You see, the 16e has this matte finish on the backside and is no longer just pure glass as you find in the 13 or even 14 versions. This means less fingerprints for everybody, which is fantastic. Furthermore, on the design aesthetics, we have a new action button. Well, the action button itself isn't new, but it is new for the cheapest iPhones. So replacing the classic mute switch, the action button lets you customize what it does. You can set it to, for instance, launch the camera. You can set it to turn on the flashlight or open certain application. For instance, you can set it to a shortcut. Whenever you press the action button, you can even open, let's say, Instagram or your Snapchat, for instance. It's a cute and neat little feature that at the beginning was like cool to use. I personally just switched it to being able to open my camera to take quick snaps and photos, which in theory means that you can use the action button to basically replace the camera control button on the newer 16 lineup iPhones, which is neat, I'd say, the iPhones. If you assign it to the camera function, you can actually then choose whether or not it should open your photo mode or your video mode, depending on which mode you tend to use most often on your iPhone. It is, in essence, a small addition, but I can see the usefulness of it, but that in itself doesn't really scream a increase in the price bump, in my opinion. Another highlight for the cheapest iPhone is the Apple Intelligence. You see, the iPhone 16e now packs the latest A18 chip from Apple, meaning it supports Apple Intelligence, the same AI power feature found on the 15 Pro and newer models. I was initially skeptical in regards to Apple Intelligence, especially if you watched my iPhone 13 Pro review. I stated that Apple Intelligence hasn't come that far enough to be a selling point for an iPhone, and it really shows even now in the iPhone 16e. You see, the 16e is marketed as being built for Apple Intelligence, but what do you actually get and what can you actually do with Apple Intelligence? Well, some features are mostly gimmicky. So for instance, creating custom images or emojis are just like a neat little party trick that you might use once or twice and then forget about it. But other features are actually pretty much unique. So for instance, text editing, Siri integration with ChatGPT, the visual intelligence, being able to take a picture of something and finding out exactly what that thing is or product is pretty neat. And I think the later down the road they work on Apple Intelligence and what they can actually do to integrate with your phone is going to be perfect. But as of now, I still feel that Apple Intelligence isn't quite the selling point of an iPhone. But I will say though, writing a script on the iPhone 16e using AI was surprisingly good. So these features definitely need some improvement, but AI will definitely be a reason to upgrade your phone in the future. Whether it's the right reason right now, I'm not sure about that. So what about battery life? Battery life is probably one of the main reasons you get a new phone, because the current phone you have battery is no longer lasting you throughout the whole day. So getting a new phone with a better battery is of course a plus. And iPhones tend to have amazing batteries, and the 16e is no slouch in that department. It markets of having a video playback of 26 hours, which is absolutely insane. Now, I didn't do any extensive testing of the battery life. What I did was just use the phone as I would regularly do as my main daily driver, which is make some calls, watch YouTube videos, play some games, surf on the web, be on Instagram, using TikTok, just your regular stuff. And what I can say is that this phone didn't die on me, not even once. For the whole week plus I've been testing it out, I never once felt that I needed to charge it. I only charge it during the night to make sure that I had full battery for the next day. But most often I felt like I could easily go at least 2 days without even charging the iPhone 16e, which is fantastic. So if you're purely gonna buy an iPhone or phone for the battery life, the 16e is as good as any other phones out there. But then again though, people don't just buy new phones because of the battery. It tends to be a full package. And that full package is probably what is missing here, because you see, even though the iPhone 16e comes with a bunch of these quote unquote new features for a cheaper iPhone, there are some few missing features here where you're like, what is Apple even thinking? For instance, the cameras. The cameras are an odd one on the iPhone 16e. The iPhone 16e only has one 48 megapixels camera sensor, which means there is no ultra wide lens. So forget about taking those beautiful landscapes photos. There is no cinematic mode. And then you also have the macro mode. There's no more macro mode, which means you can't no longer get into super detailed zooms on the camera, which absolutely sucks. And those things being missing on the 16e is a huge letdown. Now, the camera quality itself of the 1X and the 2X is great. It looks good. Putting it side by side with my iPhone 13 Pro, you can't really see the clear difference between the two unless you're like a professional photographer or someone who works within photography. I think Apple's idea here was that this phone is aimed at those people who don't really care about all those stuff. So Apple removing basic camera features that even older iPhones used to have or still has just feels weird. Now, the next critique I have is a bit subjective, but I need to mention it. You see, the iPhone 16e still has 60 Hz refresh rate screen in 2025, guys, when even the most budget Android phones at least gives you above 60. This feels so outdated on the iPhone 16e. Put it next to my iPhone 13 Pro and the 16e screen feels slower and less responsive automatically. However though, if you're coming from a much older iPhone that has 60 Hz, obviously you won't notice the difference on the screen quality when it comes to just refresh rate. But having a higher refresh rate just makes the phone feel quicker. For such a price increase on the cheapest model, getting a better refresh rate screen would be part of our deal. Unfortunately, it is not. That being said though, the screen itself it's great. It's a 6.1-inch Super Retina OLED screen with deep blacks and vibrant colors. So watching content, whether it's YouTube, movies, or scrolling, just look fantastic on this phone. Comparing it to my iPhone 13 Pro, they're pretty much the same. So the iPhone 16e is in a very weird spot. On one hand, it's a solid phone with nice upgrades. Face ID, USB-C, a more modern, sleeker design, and an action button, which in some instances can be very cool and useful. And obviously, an amazing battery life. Those are all great things on a new iPhone. On the other hand, the iPhone 16e removes or lacks standard features that really shouldn't be missing at this price point. So the question becomes, who is this iPhone actually for? Well, I think Apple makes this very clear on their website. You see, when you look up the iPhone 16e on the Apple website and what phones it compares to, something interesting happens. The iPhone 16e tends to compare to the iPhone 11, iPhone XR, iPhone 12, and the iPhone SE, which means Apple's marketing is aimed at people coming from those older phones upgrading. It's not aimed for anybody with a 13 Pro, a 14, 14 Pro, 15, or even newer versions. The iPhone 16e is also a great option for businesses who want to just buy a chunk of cheap iPhones, the new models, and give it to their workers as a work phone. So I can see the iPhone 16e being a wonderful work phone. But what about everybody else? Well, this is where I say don't buy this phone, because even if you're upgrading from the iPhone 11, 12, or XR or previous SE, you could just buy a refurbished iPhone 15 Pro and get everything that the iPhone SE has, but better and cheaper. Thinking of the price of the iPhone 16e just doesn't really sit well with me. So those are my thoughts and opinions on the iPhone 16e after using it for well about 1 week. It's a very odd iPhone that doesn't really make a lot of sense at that price point, but it is still a good phone. What do you think about the iPhone 16e? Is it a phone you are thinking about getting or will be getting soon? If so, let me know in the comment section. And also, what is your favorite iPhone? Personally, I have the iPhone 13 Pro and I really love it. And if you want to hear more about my opinion on iPhone 13 Pro, remember to check out the link in the description of my review. Thanks for watching. Peace out. And I'll catch you guys in the next tech vid. See ya.